So, is that how you feel? Good morning, good evening, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Al Bob here. I'd like to tell you a story. You know, um, if COVID jelly beans was the worst thing to happen to humanity, um, well, man, we'd be like Easter Sunday looking for the Easter eggs. It's like point 0.1 um, was the level of more mobility of COVID jelly beans. And but our good friend Billy Micropenis made $500 million on the jelly bean stab. You know, and it's not that jabbing isn't good. You know, when you know I have an infection, I take an antibiotic, but not all the time. And I stay away from pretty much any food that has antibiotics in it. So pretty much, I just eat what grows in the forest around my little deep green. I eat a lot of burdock. I eat a lot of dandelions. Wintertime, a little tough, but burdock is still there. It's quite interesting. Just like the love of women. You compare women to men. Men are so bent out of shape about women being pushy. Well, they had to be, you know, because men are such Richard craniums. Go look that up in Australian speak. And just, Richard cranium, right? Richard, is Dick. And why do guys named Richard um, have to call themselves Dick? Maybe, well, just look at all the dicks we know. Dick Army, Dick Nixon. What other dicks do we know? And Richard Cranium, what is the cranium? You know? So Richard Cranium is Dick. And that's pretty much what men are brought up to be. I just see it happening. Colonel Sanders with his little boy, he's a kid is really sweet and nice and smart. And and now that Grandpa Cockroach is living with them, and Grandpa was complaining how the grandchildren ignore him. I mean, don't even say hi. I mean, he doesn't exist. He is dead to them. And I said to Grandpa, so they're just teenagers. That's what teenagers do. No, this is I'm the grandpa. I said, well, then what did you do to make them want to um, be dead to them? What did you do to be dead to them? Right. So the first time I saw I Love Lucy, I realized, and I probably was like, I don't know, 53, 55, somewhere in there, was I realized that not only was she amazing, which she was, but the rest of the cast was amazing. Fred Mertz and Ethel, they were amazing actors. Ricky he wasn't just being Ricky, he was really being amazing, right? And the fact that they were doing something new by shooting the show not on film. I mean, it was on film, but with three cameras, a live audience, and played it out like a theatrical play, gave it a spontaneity. Now, other people did that. One other person did it before them. I can't quite remember their names, but and then other people did it after them, right? But Desi Lou, Lucy did it so well. It was like put into stone that, and that she did it. And even though their production company was Desilu, it was very interesting. That everyone saw Lucy as the admiral of the Navy because she was such a force. She had to be able to get what she did in her life. She had to do that, right? And um, Desi Arnaz, he was the love of her life, and of course, it was tumultuous. They were both very strong, egoed, tumultuous people, but they supported each other. Even when they got divorced, they supported each other. That's why Desilu kept going after they split, because they knew that they were a dynamic business and artistic couple, right? And that's the thing I see going on in pretty much all male female relationships, that and not only that, but human relationships, because people don't understand um, the dynamic, and that they're being played, that there's this alien force, this thing that isn't God. God, which is, I keep going to this thing called Sunday fellowship. I go to three different Christian churches: the Ku Klux Klan Southern Baptist Church, the Methodist I Own Everything Church, and the Catholic Pagan Church. And they're all very nice people. They're all doing something higher than themselves. Oh, someone's calling it. Who's calling it? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, David. Hey, David.
How's it going?
Oh, I'm on the internet on my Wi-Fi YouTube show, and you are now my first guest of the day.
No way.
Yes, baby. You won the lottery.
Well, I'd like to go to Hawaii.
Okay. And we'll also give you a dishwasher too.
I've already got two.
Well, you're an American. You need three.
Huh. You live and learn. I was actually just wanted to check in, see how you were reviewing the, I believe it's Patrick O'Brien series.
Oh, I'm still reading them. I'm on the third one, and I've slowed down. The first one I ate up like ice cream. Second one, I kind of okay. Third one, in the midst, and it's still interesting, but it's like my novel. I wrote 15 novels, and they're really one big novel. So his series is similar to that.
Yes. I just wanted to check what numbers I've sent you, so I could. I'm packing up books.
I know it's 1, 2, and 3, and there is one more in there. I don't know which number that is, and really tell you. I mean, I didn't realize I was reading the second one until I read the third one, where it did say on the book jacket that was the third one.
So I'm going to assume you're ready for 5 and 6, just because I'm sending them out.
Yes, I would say yes. Right.
All right. So
I'm also, I'm reading Soul on Ice again, and I'm reading what else? I'm reading the Bible. I've been stuck on the Bible because it's great fodder for my novels. If you're going to rip somebody off, you might as well rip the Bible off, because they ripped everybody off. So it's I think it's open business to do that.
Yeah, and they really should have come up with a better name for that in Indo-European rather than just using book.
Right.
I mean, it's so lame. Hey, what do you want to call this book?
Book.
Book. I mean, come on. Even for that, it should lose points.
What would you have called it as a druid? Because the anti-druid book, because it really isn't. It's everything that it says in that Donald. How Donald Trump would say something, and if you turned it 180 degrees, it would be right on.
Yeah, I think Old Testament at least I would call it. It would needs a longer title. I would call it incomprehensible manual for living a Jewish lifestyle.
Yes, and I was and virtually like I was reading Exodus pretty thoroughly the last few days, and the first maybe fifth of Exodus, maybe a quarter of Exodus is all about midwives and women,
Hmm.
right? And that's when I got to thinking, hmm. And then God gives these 10 commandments, and nowhere does he really.
Al, it was 15. Remember?
Oh,
Didn't
yeah.
you see Mel Brooks?
Yes, and then he
dropped one on the way
one,
down.
yes, yeah. And those were the good ones.
Yeah,
Those were the ones about sharing and honoring your mate and your brother. Right. Yes, exactly.
yeah.
The other ones, the first 10 are just about property rights.
Yeah, I mean, how dry can you get?
Really dry. I mean, for a guy who's supposed to be a party animal like a burning bush, I think I give God a few points for showing up as a burning bush.
Yeah, yes, it's relatively original, I suppose.
Yeah. Somewhat.
I mean, you don't hear many gods showing up like that. I mean,
No.
you don't hear gods showing up as like a giant jack-o'-lantern.
Right.
That floats.
Yes, I would like that. Well,
yeah.
They're all always, big guys sitting on a golden toilet shitting on people. It's like.
Well, it's cultural differences between gods and people. They mean well. They just don't know how to interact very well. It's like those Greek gods too. Same thing. They're like impregnating other people's wives,
right.
doing all kinds of. Not to say that the Christians got off on that. They had a lady that. Well, you know the story.
I know the story. And but then you look at the Sumerians and the Babylonians, and I think that ties what is like more like a country club. Only us can belong to this country club. The rest of you just have to be gardeners, and janitors.
And open your hearts so that you can hear our God talking directly to your mind, telling you that you're a lower class.
Right, exactly.
The bicameral mind.
Yes, I love that one. God, the three, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I love that, but they're all God. They're three separate things, but they're not.
Yeah, they had a lot of hard time with that too. I think that a lot of those issues came up in the Reformation too, because the whole three, was really
right.
a little bit over the heads of your average peasant.
Well, they were just trying. It's just like what's going on now. They're just trying to rebrand the same old story. It's kind of what we're going through right now.
Yeah. Humans just are, as a whole, they're not really that original.
And or fun loving. Just look at us. When we did stuff, pretty much I think having fun was at the top of our list.
And making it a positive change in the neighborhood world.
Right. Well, that was part of being fun, right? Or theater, or everything we did with a panache of sorts.
Yeah, I'm looking at our outdoor screens, and I had a junkie that's sort of slow dancing in the middle of the sidewalk. Oh, and it's the same junkie. It's great. This junkie, he like gives me a hard time on a regular basis, and then he forgets, and he treats me like the same person that he can get money from, even though every time he interacts with me.
He just gave you a hard time earlier this morning.
Yesterday morning, he gave me a hard time. And I almost used the Robert Parker thing from 13th Street. Because when he's like, "You're the guy from Keefe Street." Wait a minute, hey, he really just wanted to stop me so he could ask me for money.
Right.
And I just kept on walking, and he said, "Another fucking racist."
Right.
And I was thinking, from 13th Street, when all the black guys from the Philadelphia building were talking about how Robert was a racist.
A Richard Cranium.
No, this is Parker. They were saying that he's a racist,
Right.
And Sam Smith, my roommate, came up to them and said, "You know, you guys don't really understand. Parker's not a racist. He's an asshole.
Right. Right.
And he's
Exactly.
that way towards everybody.
Everybody.
Doesn't matter what color
What
you
color
are.
you are. Yep.
Then that's an asshole.
Right.
He's not racist.
And that's, I mean,
So-
that could be said about virtually every politician ever born. They're not racist or sexist or misogynist. They're just assholes.
Yeah, could be.
Selfish assholes, meaning they only think about themselves.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that, but I'm going to hop off here because I've been was telling Janet about this particular junkie,
Right.
and she's out there, and I want to just point out
You know,
that
there
the
are not
guy.
too many. There are not too many of them left because they're all doing fentanyl, so they're dying off.
Okay, listen. You go with the next person on this, and I have now I can send you the right books, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Okay, bud.
Okay, bye.
Later. Good talking to you. So that was my David. I don't know how many Davids you guys know, but they mostly all want to be called David because they don't want to lose their id. And he and I could pull out the photos, took over abandoned buildings in Lower East Side, and we were the spiritual, fun-loving crew that gave other people we gave them technical assistance, right? We were like the UNICEF of of homesteaders, right? So we went up to different necks of the woods, up to South Bronx and Brooklyn, all different necks of the woods, to help and inspire. And me being a master electrician, the key to taking over an abandoned building. First of all, no one can own it. The state has to own it. So you can take it over with the Homestead Act of 1876. If somebody else owns it, that's like you're going on there, even if it's falling down or on fire or whatever, you don't own it until the state takes it, right? Now, the state can take it relatively quickly, and that's what they did in the 50s, late 40s and 50s and 60s. That's what Robert Moses did with, taking over property, right? And so, and talking about taking over property, my electronics constantly get interrupted, and it's disappointing. Uh, See, it doesn't want my devices to be. It lets my laptop be online, but my handheld devices are constantly being messed with. Now that's because they want me to, you know, basically, say turns it off and then keeps it off. Right? So, such is life. Oh, well, let's see. No one's watching. It's 19 minutes and 7 seconds into the show. I can't really cruise the internet on my other device and give you insights on that. So let's call some more people. Let's see. Let's see how Little Miss is doing. And now the phone doesn't. I mean, now this is a day that It's cloudy, it's rainy. This is when my cell phone actually kind of works, but it's not. It's not doing it. Now, a phone call came in from Mr. Ed, but it says I have a quarter of a bar. Anybody out there who knows my phone number, give me a call. Seems it only allows things calling in. Oh, so women, women are really the mother of invention. It's like invention isn't being done by the father, it's being done by the mother. you know. Okay, so uh, since the powers that be are, kind of restraining my creativity, we will do something a little more exciting. We were gonna do right here, right now, when it's 20 minutes and 21 minutes and 21 seconds. We're gonna do a guided meditation, okay? And we're gonna really do a serious guided meditation. Right? So, put yourself in a state by taking that big breath in and then breathing out. And take that. Now that you breathe all the way out, you can breathe all the way in even more. And at the top of it, you take 2 breaths in. Then you say, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am. Oh. Conscious awareness I am, conscious awareness I am, conscious awareness I am. Oh. Conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am. Conscious awareness I am, conscious awareness I am, conscious awareness I am, conscious awareness I am, conscious awareness I am. You're not trying, you are doing this. You're going into a deep, deep, deep state of conscious intent. Being aware that your subconscious mind is being put to sleep. I'm going to count from 1 to 3, and as I do, your conscious mind, your conscious mind, that one that the little squirrel is in the metal cage and in that piece of cottage cheese between your ears. This thing up here, you have 3 brains, right? The cottage cheese brain, your heart, which is the CPU, central processing unit, is your heart, right? And they call it a cardiovascular system, and that includes your lungs and your heart and all the veins, arteries, capillaries that transmit love's co-creation. So as you breathe it in, right, you're breathing in that prana light, that unconditional love of God. That's what prana is. Prana has no shadows. See, prana, no shadows, right? But incandescent light has a shadow. Prana, right? No shadows. Incandescent light, a shadow. Right? That shadow was, and in the beginning, everything was dark. And then bang, Gob was lonely, so he creates Lucifer, his first angel, right? The illuminated one, the translucent, illuminated, incandescent. That's all the verbs that were used about, Satan, Satan, and he has many names. And basically what Satan is the materialistic version of Jesus Christ, right? And all during, and the Bible, couldn't we have gotten a better, you know name rather than book, right? It might have been, why didn't we call, I like that. What do they call those novels, that have, it's like a comic book, but not, there's a name for that. And, or something, something a little more connective, right? Other than where we don't want you to read, but if you're going to read, read this book. They should call our book. At least would have been a straight up kind of give you a heads up. So your conscious mind is getting sleepy, right? That squirrel is. I don't want. I don't. A number of the everyone in the Colonel Sanders clan, they have a great opportunity. I live right down the road from them, right? And they can't do but anything but go by my little deep green. Their place looks like a cesspool. It was actually kind of nice before they showed up because it was growing over. I mean, it was there was nobody there. And then you know for 18 years, rich people came to look at buying that thing, and I could hear them coming up either from the Death Road or off the Forest Service Road, and I would, get my golden underpants on, and and they were like Dallas cheerleaders, hot pants, real tight around the bulge, and hair would be coming out the sides, and I'd be there, other than my Crocs, I'd be there totally naked, and I'd have a plastic straw hat, you know, recycled garbage bags, squeezed in to make it look like straw, but it was plastic, so it was like straight. It didn't bend, it didn't sag, it didn't do anything. It was just sticking on top of my head, and I would have a. I don't know if you ever saw these, but Disney puts out lots of merch, lunch boxes, anything, and so they have um, instrument kind of things. Mostly these plastic guitars, plastic ukuleles, plastic banjos that you really can't play, but there's a little crank, and inside there, there's that little thing, music box, and so there'd be a song there, either like dee, 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 or something else. And I had a banjo that played Deliverance, right? And so I'd be by the side of the road in these golden underpants with the hair coming out the sides of it, and totally naked, bare chested, bare everything, um, and with this plastic, pork pie straw hat on my head, and a plastic corncob pipe, and a plastic Disney Mickey Mouse banjo, playing Deliverance. And as I drove by, I would be playing the Deliverance, and if they, even if they'd like slow down and just be like, and whether they open the window or not, I would go, "You got a nice mouth," and that was enough to keep the cockroaches away for 18 years, and it was loads of fun, right? And right now, your conscious mind is going to sleep, right? Going to sleep. And you are seeing in the imaginary mirror this image of me totally naked except for golden Dallas cheerleaders short shorts with the hair coming out the sides, and the plastic porn pie, and the plastic corn cob, and the plastic Mickey Mouse banjo playing Deliverance, going, "You got a nice mouth." And the people driving up in their Lexuses and their Land Rovers and their Mercedes, uh, their stupid phone would always tell them to come up the death road, right? Rather than coming up off the county highway off of and you come up the Forest Service Road. And so it was like maybe a tenth of a mile more, maybe half a mile more, but still it was flat, right? And didn't have these gigantic potholes, right? And so the death road has potholes. They're about a foot deep, about 12 feet long, and 6 feet wide. Half the road, right? There's no way you can't go in it. If on a motorcycle, you can. And how did they happen? Well, the road is that steep. Even though it's paved, it's that steep. These morons would shoot up that road And even though is it was not super duperly well made road, but it was blacktop, and when they would spin their wheels on it, would make these indentures. And then we live in a like right now, it's raining, 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 and when it rains, it can rain. This is a rainforest, and we've had you know weather changes. It's gotten what happens is in the spring, like from February to and June, it rains a good deal. Back in when I first got here 20 years ago, it would rain all the time or snow too, right? But never the snow was, we never really had more than 5 inches of snow. And then it would, you know, we're way on top of a mountain. If sun can hit something, ooh, it melts it quick. So that was never a big problem, especially if you weren't in a rush, and especially if you weren't here. First of those 18 years, I probably was here, 4 or 5 months at most each of those years, right? Maybe less, in the beginning, way less. The first 3 years, I had no place to stay, right? Until I met my, oh, I don't know what to call my excavator, except call him Mr. Excavator. And he was really good, but he was a Richard Cranium to everyone, especially people who he shouldn't have been, like his wife and his kids, right? So when he was getting divorced, his wife was going to take everything. So he was trying to hide everything. So he found me and said, "Hey, I'll do your excavating. Can I leave my stuff here?" And I said, "Sure." So the first thing he did was make a thing for him to put his stuff there that no one could see. And that was fine. And then he made a pad, put more stuff, but it was a little more like off the Forest Service road. So, but still, no one ever came up that thing, so they didn't see it, right? And he would just keep, making that because we kind of in the original we had because it was a bog. It was the bottom of a holler, and so that's why nobody wanted it. It was like you walked into the forest and you went up to your ankle in mud and covered in no-see-ums and mosquitoes. You got ate alive, so nobody wanted that piece of property. So but it was still, in the Sawtooth Mountains. So the two roads were still kind of, even though this road um, and it was draining into my property. What we did was we kind of slurred the road to go into the forest because there was a big cliff there. And so that took 3 years, and because he didn't work on it all the time, because he was doing other stuff, making money. He was just hiding shit, which turned out the best for me because the more he did that, the slower he worked, and the more we could do exactly how I wanted it done. Because a few of the times when he was rushing through stuff, he would kind of fuck it up because he was rushing. Right? He wasn't consciously aware. He wasn't consciously intent. He was just getting it. But in the long run, so he kind of rushed through my septic system. But instead of putting a 500-gallon concrete tank, he put a 25 because that's all he. I don't know where he got them, but I came in one day and they were stacked up like a pyramid, and he was using them on other jobs, but he had no place to put them. So he stuck one of them where he got them, but he stuck it there and he put the drainage lines in. And he did it in such a way that luckily I took pictures of it because the inspector guy, I had to bring him out there and show it to him. And because he said, "Well, I come down," because it wasn't like right in front of his face. So I said, "Come on, I'll take you out to lunch. I'll show you where they are," which I did, right? So he said, "Oh, there they are." And he goes, "Well, that makes sense because the way it's laying and where it is and da 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 da." Because wasn't even looking where he thought the septic. I mean, it was a pipe coming up. You'd say, "See, that's the septic tank," but he didn't. Wasn't consciously aware. So I'm describing all these little vignettes so you can see them on your imaginary mirror there because you're consciously intent. I am consciously intent. I am consciously aware. I am. And you're recognizing that these little vignettes are shamanic tales for you to see as metaphors to the world frigging around you. Can you see it now? 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 please wake up. I mean, I should have at least two bars. So, the cockroach clan at the end of the things that has the, Branch Davidian compound. Um, and, so everything this guy's done is, a total cluster frack, coming from a Richard Cranium motif, a maleistic Richard Cranium motif. And he has a really great wife who's bringing home the bacon. She makes, I don't know, 70, 80 G's a K, being a traveling nurse. And the main reason, and she puts it in her own account. She doesn't let him touch the cash, right? She pays the major bills and make sure the kids are fed. But other than that, and so, but when she's got a new gig that she's around more, and drives her crazy, what he does. And you have to realize that people are drawn to the dynamics of their own characteristics. So, if she wasn't with this clown, she'd be with another clown. And as I look at women, especially the women in my life, right? I've had at least 50 women in my life, right? Not all intimate, but all very close and loving, and but I would say at least 40 were intimate, and 8 I called my wives. In that I mean, every person that I come across, right? And that's why you folk who watch this, who are part of the cadre, are drawn to this show, because I am intimately connected to you. I am the griot telling you a story. You are the student, right? And you are picking this up. Now, a good portion of the folk, why they just play it as wallpaper, is that it gets to them. They like it better than listening to Fox or anything else. But if they were to really be consciously intent, I am, they would have to see what their life is and what they need to do with it, and what they're not doing with it, and what they are doing with it, and that they could step up to it. And that's what this show is about, and that's why it's kind of a stream of consciousness. It's not. Now, I play lots of other people's. Yesterday, I played these two YouTubes, one about fascism and one about the CIA, that were very good. The guys who did them did an amazing job, meaning they researched, they got all the data, they got all kinds of images, they made a really good YouTube. And that's the beauty of YouTube. And that's why it's, the internet that we have now is going away. All of the aspects of the World Wide Web that allows the world to integrate and to talk to each other is going to disappear relatively quickly, and will be replaced by Elon Musk internet, because that's why he stuck all the satellites. He doesn't. I mean, right now they're sticking all these wires, because one of the reasons why the rich people didn't want to live here was that there was no conductivity. There was no. These are sawtooth mountains, so unless you're on top of those mountains, you weren't getting anything from the satellite, right? If you were on the other 89% of that mountain, you weren't getting nothing, right? There was no, the cell guys didn't put anything here because there was no big highway. There was no only poor people, only hollered folk lived here. They didn't care about them. And then, government actually spent, passed bills saying, "Oh, poor people should have the internet," and so they put, close to $10 million using that for this area, and they made a compact, and that compact just put that money and put it into stocks and made like $30 million and paid themselves that money for about 6, 8 years. But once the mobsters came in here and bought up everything, just like they did to, I always forget the name of the place. It's not, it's, it'll pop into my mind. But everything from Asheville up to Johnson City to Kingsport, that whole 400 square miles of Blue Ridge Mountains on this side, Appalachian Mountains on that side, and everything in between is the accordion Sawtooth Mountain Range, and that's what this is, right? And Boone is there. Um, you know, Little Switzerland, Micaville, which are the two smallest that they have. They're so kind of far away. There's no big roads. They are still kind of what they were, so they're just letting them, just dissolve into the earth. But the places like where Lee's McCraig is, where Angelo's dad, who's a mobster, came in with $40 million. What is that place called? I forget. But also, where the App State, all those kids. When I was at App State, not as as I wasn't quite a professor or an adjunct. I was a research assistant, but I was teaching. I was studying the process of becoming a teacher because it was a teachers college, right? And so I was looking at education for Brookings, right? And which actually was the base kind of understanding of what No Child Left Behind should be, right? And so that was 70, no, maybe it was a period between 74 and 77. 74 is when I got back from New Mexico, and between 74 and 77, I did a whole bunch of stuff. Is that Jamie? Let's see. Incredible weather here. Very unusual. When you say, is it like really super sunny and hot, or is it windy? Is it snowing? What's it? And thank you for. I misplaced my. I have so little money right now. I don't have the gas to go to to the Dollar Tree and buy dollar pairs of glass because I leave them everywhere, right? Uh, Super hot. Yep. Well, that's what we're experiencing. The global. Jamie, did you ever read Very Dry? Yes, which is not good for where you are because your flora and fauna is so used to being in a rainforest-ish kind of place, um, that they'll be super sensitive to that. And that's like where I'm at. This is a rainforest, and in the last 8 years, um, it has changed. Well, it still rains, but not like it used to. Rains enough to keep everything semi-green, so people think, "Hey, look, there's a leaf on the tree." But what's really happening is that the energy hitting here is like a nuclear weapon. It's like between 11 a.m. even when it's cloudy, the UV is like dangerous, right? I mean, I look on a little gauge and it's like raining right now. I look on it and the UV was at 10. It's like, you know, that's why I'm inside my car. I'm surrounded by like a Faraday cage, and uh, very dry. Have our own well. Yep, exactly. and that'll be fine. I mean, the well I have, one of the reasons I bought this place, it had amazing water, but the water is not amazing. The water now is fair, good. It's not, but there is nothing. There is no industrial, no farm, no reason for it to be as poor as it was compared to when I got here 20 years ago. Except that all around us, within a oh 10-mile circle, has been grabbed up and turned into Airbnb land, tourist land, you name it, land. And anyway, it looks pretty compared to other sewer holes. This looks really beautiful, and that's why all the cockroaches are coming here. But they're destroying it very quickly, meaning there's been a marked, um, you know, destruction of this place in the last 2 years, last 3 years, and my little, garden paradise. They haven't. These properties have been sold, bought and sold like pancakes the last 2 years. And people buy them and they see the picture and buy it like sight unseen, and then they come here and realize their property is like on a cliff. So to build a house, your basement or foundation is going to be cost more than the road and the utilities up to your house, and your foundation will cost twice as much as the rest of everything is going to cost. Right. So when they see, oh wow, if I want to build $100,000 house, it's going to cost me $300,000 to build a road and bring the utilities up there. And even though they're in the ground, they're right on the death road and off of the Forest Service road. But that's why I bought what I did, because it's the flattest spot there is, And I found this crazy excavator guy who did all my excavating stuff over 5 years and made a perfect site, because he didn't have to rush through it, and he could keep his stuff hidden, so he didn't want to go full bore. Anyway, we live above a huge aquifer here in Tipperary. Yeah, I love the Tipperary Mountains. I love how it's like up here it's like you're in, well, it's kind of, you guys are Druids, so you're in a Druidic heaven up here where all the Druid gods are. And then pretty goes down to, well, not on this side, but on the western side goes to the ocean, right? And those are some of the greatest. I love the little teeny roads that go up there, and they can never be made into gigantic highways. Like I thought, the two roads that go around Ireland, the one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. The one on the East Coast, when I was there in the 70s and 80s, that was, a pretty well-worn road. That was the Anglo-Saxon road. But the road that went from Dublin up to Limerick and then over to all along, the West Coast, past the Ring of Kerry and Skibbereen and Glendore, all the way up to where the races are. Where do they have those races? Right at the top up there on the West Coast. I thought that road would never become more than 2-lane, but I went back in 2005. They were turning it into a super highway, because the West Coast is like going to Florida. Gulf of Mexico hits it. There are palm trees there. I used to I had a good friend who had a beautiful house on one of those little peninsulas of the Ring of Kerry. And I loved Ireland back before they joined the EU, because, they had free health care. Everyone was on the dole. And if you actually wanted to do something, the government would give you some money to do it. He had an ice cream shop at the end of one, I forget which Ring of Kerry it was, but he bought a little farm, and it was like right down to the ocean, a beautiful beach. And he turned a barn and a few other things into, like, not a motel, but a place where people could, comfortably. He was doing glamping before glamping, and he had an ice cream shop. And people actually went there because he had goats that he was getting goat milk, and he was doing gelato. I mean, this guy was way ahead of his time. And so I used to hang out at his place and fix things for him and make sure his electricity worked. And because he was, for a guy who was pretty ahead of his time, he was not very fix. He couldn't fix it. He wasn't too bad on motorcycles. He liked motorcycles, but everything. The lights in his house, no. His hot water, no. His other things. And I made some other. He had whoever was had that farm was pretty interesting because there was no electricity out there. So they had gotten a windjammer, a electric turbine. That you should go look up, guys. Go look up windjammers, right? And they electrified all of a good deal of farmers establishments before the TVA, right? And they were a pretty well amazing facility all the way up to the 50s. And then GE and Westinghouse and a few other people who were going to build nuclear power too cheap to meter put them out, and TVA finally strung wires out to everybody. Let's see. I have to squeeze my eyes. Yeah. And then West Coast is essential, but still beautiful in the summer. Yep. So see, I've always been way ahead of everybody else. Always lived in, when I lived in Ireland in the, late, all the 70s till 88. I didn't live there. I went there 6 different times and spent almost a year or at least 6 months there. And that was my base of operation. I would go live other places. I lived in Sweden. I lived in Brazil. And those were my bases of operation. I would travel to all different, especially when I lived in Sweden, because I had a free ticket to go anywhere in the world, And then I did it, earlier on, in the 60s and in different parts of the 70s. I hitchhiked. I rode the rails. In the 60s, it was really great. Colleges before the internet, they had real they had boards in all these colleges, ride boards, where people would say, I'm heading this way. You want to go? Yes. Throw some money into the gas. I need some company. And I did a lot of that, right? Especially if it was, and my name is Susie Q, or Betty Cream Cheese, I was definitely the first. And most guys, I don't want to ride with a girl. Okay, stupid, get out of the way. And that's my whole, I never understood guys' attitude. I always thought I was blessed when I had a woman in my life. I didn't think I was being, ball and chain. No, I was a happy guy. And the women I was with were women who were extraordinary. Brilliant, beautiful, and had their own gig going where they were extraordinarily successful. And what was truly, I was just there to assist in any way I could and not tell them what to do because they were already doing a pretty good job. I was going to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And just be super supportive and have loads of fun and, fill in the places that they wanted filled in that no one was filling in for them. So I filled it in for them, right? So that still works pretty good, right? And I was always doing my own thing and open and willing to share everything I was doing with them, like my first wife. And Donna Ann Mac Adams was my first and only real wife. I mean, legal wife, meaning we were in London doing photo shoot. And at one point, she refused to work unless we got married. said, well, we are married. He said, no, no. She goes, and not that kind of, commitment, even though I like that and it's the best I've had. But no, no, I need to have a paper. I need to have a document. I said, really? You hate the church, you hate kids, you hate, state, you hate everything that marriage stands for. Why? She goes, I don't know. I just have to, what it was her father. Before we went up to Europe, he took me out in the middle of February on a public course, and he was playing it better than Arnold Palmer. And this guy was amazing. But because he was a poor white boy, even though he was brilliant and amazing, he got drafted to go to the Korean War. They found out he was really smart, so they taught him radar, and he was part of the development of the Nike Zeus anti aircraft missile system, and he was part of that. And so when he left the military, Raytheon, who I think was called UNIVAC then, made him a head guy, and he was, when he died, he had a heart attack at work, and he died. They were paying less than what the janitor was making. And when he died, they had to replace him with 5 PhDs. And, anyway, and that's one reason he died, because there was nothing in his life that, his wife that he married, who was his high school sweetheart, who was the hot chickadee when he came back. She's still the hot chickadee. Once he got that job, they had the first kid, Donna Ann. He was the first one. And she never was sexy after that. Then, she had 2 more loser boys. And Donna Ann went to live with grandma and grandpa in Brooklyn, who were total Irish, turned her into an Irish Colleen. She wore the clogging shoes and the little dancing dress, and she learned to play the violin and the accordion. And when I met her, she was a photographer, right? So, but when we went to visit her home, she lived in, a house, mom, dad, 2 boys, and her, in a place about the size of my little garage, right? And she lived in a little closet. And so when we went there at first, I met her father, and her father and I just hit it off because I knew everything he was, we were talking aerospace, and he was like, whoa, this guy actually knows what I'm talking about. Everyone I talked to had no idea what I'm talking about. This guy actually knows and understands that, even my employers don't appreciate me. This guy does. I like this guy. And the one child I have who I adore, he seems to really take good care of her. He seems to make her happy. He seems to be the best thing since sliced bread. So the second time we went to visit her, her parents and her father, he took me out to play golf, and he said, listen, you're the one. And I said, I'm the what? He goes, yeah, you're the one. I said, what am I the one of? He goes, you're going to marry my daughter. I said, what? No, sir, she's not in that way. He said, no, you don't understand. You make her happy. I've never seen her this happy. You make her content. She was never, she left here at 16 to go to, had to drive across, go from Long Island to San Francisco to get away from us. This terrible life. I hate my life. So he goes, I don't even like working anymore. I used to really get off on building rockets that blew up things. And it was like Buck Rogers, but now it's just corporate bullshit, And so he's the only guy who said Eisenhower said it like it was, Let's see. Like super beautiful. Yep. Irish stuff. Yep. Yeah. Well, you're a lucky guy, Jamie. Have anybody as beautiful, smart, and fun as Donna Ann. And so we had a great 10 years, right? And I constantly, and so she, and this is something that happens to everybody. They get stuck in a rut. And so she had a rut of whiny, pissant boyfriends, right? Who wouldn't satisfy her until she, picked a fight with them to the point where they were like about to kill each other. And then they'd have make-up sex, right? With that kind of passion, right? And the first year and a half that we, I was like taking care of her in such ways that no one ever has. So she was just like And then when we went to Europe, um, I totally not only paid everything, but supported us into doing things that would like put her on the front marquee, put her on the main stage, right? And because I could do it, I could just walk in and do it. But I wanted to have her have that experience because she was that good, that brilliant, that I mean, she was Annie Leibovitz's first assistant. She got a bachelor's and master's degree in fine arts at the Art Institute in San Francisco on her own, right? She was the head tech of the darkroom at Rolling Stone, right? So this girl was, numero uno, but she kept falling into, um, you know, potholes until she met me on the subway, right? And so we were about to go up to Europe, and her father said, "Oh, you have to marry marry my daughter, right? The only thing I love in this world is her." And so I said, "Well, I don't know. It's all up to her." Well, And so we got to there, and we visited some of her family's, her aunt or her her grandma's sister's daughter, whatever that is, maybe second cousin. So anyway, she and we fell right into that family who were Irish in England, and the husband was killing himself by having his business of digging ditches to put telecom in. And they were like, a good council flat, middle class family, right? And the kids they had like three girls, six kids, right? And they were just a wild, crazy bunch. And we showed up and slept, and what's two more, So we slept on the couch in the living room, and we stayed there about 2 months and just had the best of time, which kind of eased us into because we could. That was the beauty of England, man. They had a railroad you get anywhere in England, no problem. You didn't have to have a car, and so we did England. Went all over the place, right? And I took her to places I had been, Oxford and into Scotland, and took her up to where Archie was, and Archie was just about dead. That was the last time I saw Archie, and he kind of scared. Donna didn't want to go, right? And because she didn't want to, she had that crone in her big time, and I knew that. That's one reason why I met her on the subway. I kind of felt that energy and kind of went over to her. And she wasn't just a cute little girl taking pictures on the subway. She had something special. Anyway, so um, we had traveled all over that. We went to Ireland to meet the old crones in her family, her grandma's sisters, who were like, wow, the three witches from Shakespeare, Boyle, Toil, and Trouble. And they kept like glamming onto me. And they didn't like, oh, you're this guy, he's kind of cool. And they were in their 90s. And because their sister, who went off to America, basically, was the youngest, right, and the cutest. Anyway, these girls, they owned lots of property in Ireland. If Donna had been smart, she would have glammed on those girls, so she would have gotten that property because they kind of just gave it away to the church or whoever they gave it away to. But anyway, that's when I went back in the 80s. They were dead, and that property was already gone because everybody and his brother EU was like buying up Ireland. Donna, yeah, she caught me. Yep. But so Donna and I were together for a good 10 years, and in England. So we came back from Ireland, and we still wanted to stay in Europe because I'd gotten to see. You just get on a train and we can go to Paris, we can go to Yugoslavia, we can go to anywhere, and it's not a big deal. So it's like going to another state, and the EU is just getting its act together. They were calling it something else. Anyway, so I found a an apartment. It wasn't even an apartment. It was like a closet right near Paddington Station, right? And it had one window, but the building next door was that far from the window. The only time you saw any sunlight was when it was 12 noon and it was coming straight down. Right? It was quite, and the toilet was on the wall. And no, the shower was on the wall. The toilet was in the hall. When you came in the door, there wasn't a light switch. There was an electric meter. You had to put in a crown, and and it would go click, 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 click. You could hear it ticking away. You had about an hour and a half's worth of electricity, and then you'd hear it go, stop clicking, go, and you'd be in the dark. So, you know, once the sun came up, we never put anything in the coin tip for electricity, only at night. When we came home late-ish, and we knew we'd be fooling around for at least an hour, we'd put a coin in there, and you could a half a crown you could put in there too, so you'd only get 40 minutes of electricity. Anyway, and so there was like just room enough for the shower on the wall. It was a little, I wouldn't call it a kitchen, it was a sink with an electric burner. You had your hand on the fry pan and touch the thing, and so I did all the cooking. But there were so many Pakistani and Asian, South Asian restaurant, not restaurants, just stands where you could get food really cheap and really good. That's what we mostly ate when we were there. Anyway, we got a gig to do a photo shoot, right? And we did one, and the guy said, "Well, you guys are good. Sure, here's another one." And so we did it. And in the middle of it, Don said, "I'm not working unless you marry me." And I was like, "What?" So you hate the church, you hate the government, you hate kids, you every reason why you would get married. We're doing fine together. We got everything working good. We work most of the issues out, because we talk. Because in this room, it was we called it the room of truth because all there was a bed. There was an armoire end where they cut the doors so they opened up. I mean, whatever clothes you had in there, you had to stand on the bed to get your clothes. So we'd always, we'd sleep naked. We'd get up, we'd open the doors, we'd be naked. One of us would be kind of asleep looking at the other's butt or the front, and then we get a little scratchy and get sweaty, and so we called it the room of truth because pretty much all we did was have sex and talk to each other and coo and talk to each other. So we'd already we'd already been together for about a year, and we got over the whiny bitch thing of makeup sex because she kept trying to have arguments with me. I don't argue, I analyze, and she would get very upset, very frustrated. And so basically I said, "Honey, we don't need to have an argument to have sex. Let's just have sex." But she couldn't get to that crescendo unless she had, her adrenaline going from the fight. So I said, I got a fix for this. And I went off and I got some wrestling mats and a 5-gallon tin of Crisco. And every time she wanted to have that kind of sex, not the kind of sex that I like having sex for like 15 hours at a time. So she liked that too. Most women do. And that's, the truth sex. It's like that's sex, but it's truth serum. You get to the deep issues when you're having sex like that, right? So my second wife, she liked that. She was an Aries, and she liked that. She didn't want to because she was going to have a fight. She was going to kill you. She wasn't going to fool around, right? So she liked, and that the fact that my second wife, I did everything she ever wanted in a guy, and never pissed her off, right? I was never trying to tell her what to do because why should I? She's brilliant and doing the best. Nobody else does what she does any better. She's like number one. So what could I? All I can do is be there to assist, right? So she had a big factory. She had 42 employees, and she had a big she made handbags, and so she had all these sewing machines, and a lot of them were ancient. So Grandpa Stoll taught me how to fix old machines. So I was, she would call in the Singer guy, and he had no idea what the fuck that thing was. I'd fix it, right? All kinds. She had took over a old, you know, um, garment district factory um, in off of Eighth Avenue. It was actually on Broadway, and it was about 28th Street, maybe maybe 38th Street, somewhere between 30th and 20th in there. And it was not the most prestigious place to be, but it was a big space. It was a good 8,000 square feet in a major big space, and there were four other little spaces that were at least 1,000 to 2,000 square foot themselves. And it had a pretty good elevator out to a loading dock in off an alley. Where there were no other businesses clogging up that alley, right? And she had put a gate at one end, and she's the only one had a lock, and so she that was perfect for her, right? And the rent was, you know, at and this was 1983, 4, 5, 6, up to 88, and well, 86. Anyway, that 4-year period or so, and anyway, I think she was paying. So in a garment district, they make a product and then they have a show and get a lot of orders and they make a lot of money. And then from 4 months after that, you know, they still get orders, but it's going down and down and down. And then about 4 months before the next big show, they don't really have anything coming in unless they're, some gigantic entity. Even though what her product was that which no one else did. So she wholesaled handbags at $500 wholesale one handbag, $500. That's how good it was, right? To Neiman Marcus and people like that, and Harrods, and she'd have big orders, so she'd make millions, but her costs were millions, right? So towards that period, I would have to pay the rent, and so I remember, her rent one time I paid it was $8,000. In 1980s, that's still pretty pricey. And her electric bill was like $2 or $3 grand a month, right? Or maybe it might have been the other way around. I'm not sure. But I remember putting out 10 grand for, each month for about 2 months because she didn't have it. And so I would do that without even her asking. I would just do it, right? I would take care of everything that I could take care of that would make her happy. Everything else that she wanted to do, I never touched, right? But I never left my socks. I never left the seat or up. I never left any dishes in the. These are totally almost aberrant from how I am. So she basically just and I filled that space every time she wanted it filled in a way that she was a happy girl. So, and she had her own, she was a crone in her own way, in the Italian way, right? So because she came from Rome, and her father was the world's Albert Einstein of diamond cutters. He cut the Hope Diamond for Harry Winston, and then it had a curse. They were coming over on the Andrea Doria, and the boat sank, and they were some of the people who got saved. There was a picture of her on the New York Post being lifted out of the safety boat, and because she's such a cute little kid. And by the time she was 17, both her parents had died of alcoholism because that was the curse that got a hold of them. And that's what I'm seeing going on with all the people who are running away from California and Florida and Texas and New Jersey and Charlotte and coming here and defiling this place, is that they're all going down that thing, because there's a lot of meth here, there's a lot of OxyContin here, still, very accessible. You know, one of the little kids broke his arm, and the doctor, they said it and gave him like 40 pills of OxyContin, like a little kid. And his mother, who's a nurse, knows enough to like get rid of those. And so, anyway, that's what I'm observing all around is that the human race is basically, and this ain't end of times. Meaning, if you're a historian, is and I am a shamanic historian. I'm a psychosocial, cultural, forensic anthropologist. I'm a shamanic psychosocial culture, you know, forensic anthropologic alchemist. But on my business cards, I left those two out, right? Because most people, what's that mean? So I'm here to have this show. I'm here to interact with anyone who wants to get a hold of me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail. And I have about 100, but it's quite interesting. Out of those 100 folk over the last 4 years, 5 years, and said 5 years. I think it's five. I think this May it was 5 years, or maybe 4 years, one or the other. Still a good chunk of time. More than I'm pushing towards 2,100 shows, even though YouTube won't let me advertise. It keeps saying that I have 1,200 shows, but it started saying I had 1,200 shows 2 years ago. Still says I don't know if it gotten to 600 subscribers, but it was not allowing me to get above 500. About 3 years ago, I had a like Jerry Lewis telethon to get above. I was like 93, and let's see, I see you in Mexico. Yes, I was in Mexico. I was in Mexico for about 6 months. When the big capital city, Mexico City, had an earthquake, and it got flattened. Back in the 70s, I worked for this utility company, and I was the guy who tuned transformers. You ever see those Tonka toy places where the big towery wires of transmission lines go in, and then they get um, you know, dispersed into the community at lower voltages, and these big transformers are there. You have to tune them like a piano, kind of. But you have to tune them to be at their max and they're most efficient. And they're very expensive. Those transformers are very big. So anyway, they had earthquake and it flattened everything. So I was working in New Mexico, and we worked on lots of not just the transmission lines for the county. I was a lineman for the county, not just those guys. But we also worked for people like United Nuclear. We worked at places like Los Alamos, Sandias, Kirkland Air Force Base, and all the things. Area 51 is just that, an area. There's a ton of things out there, all different, doing different things. And they all had different electrical needs. And so they actually needed not just current, but controlled and modulated. So we went in there and did special tasks for them. And so we saw a lot of interesting things. And the crew so when I first started, I was with these guys who were just, whacked out tweakers, meth heads, heroin addicts, because they're like swinging from those towers, right? And, these guys, about 6, 7 of them would die a week because they were always drunk and fooling around with, 500 million volts of electricity, like it was, an extension cord for your toaster. And I saw this one guy get cut in half because he was putting the big heavy cable that we use to pull up these towers on one of these gigantic trucks. And that truck had a kind of crane, not a bucket. It had its own bucket too, but it had a crane that you'd put the cable to so you could get the right angle to pull this stuff up. So this guy the cable isn't there. The cable's on the ground, and the guy's got it between his legs, and he's rolling it up on this big roll at the back of the truck, right? And they want to get out of there, so they have basically taken up all the safe because we normally put in a grounding rod and they have these pads that lift the truck up so it can't move. And so this guy, everyone's putting everything away, and this guy's putting cable on the reel, and the guy putting down the big metal, crane swings it into the high tension lines. And again, they didn't set protocol in that you never put that crane anywhere close to where it could swing into those power lines. You have to keep it at least a good 100 yards away. Now, this guy, because it was where they're pulling up this other tower, instead of having to set another rig up to pull this thing up, they just wanted to stick it there and pull it up, right? So they're putting it away, and he swings it into those power lines. The guy's got that cable between his legs. There's nothing grounding out that circuit other than that big cable between the guy's legs. And it zipped him in half like cheese, right? And cauterized both sides. And he was like still alive, and he kind of split. And he was like this, but and cauterized, and half of him fell over there, and the other half. And he was trying to say something for about, I was when they were doing this. I got into one of the little trucks and drove 100 yards away and was looking at them with binoculars because I knew something. And I tried, hey guys, let's not do this. Come on. And they'd be up in those towers and they'd be throwing bolts at me. It was like, if you ever saw Star Wars, and there are a couple of things where they show the soldiers wearing these crazy hats, well, they're all linemen's hats. They're lineman hats, like a hard hat, but it comes out to here because if some guy's up there with these bolts and they fall and they hit your shoulder, you broke your shoulder, right? So I had this one that was like an umbrella. If I was like this, they couldn't hit me. So even though I was supposedly, but I was like 22, they were all in their 30s. They were all drunk. They were all heroin addicts. They're not listening to me. I don't know. And so this guy got right up, right? And a couple of weeks before, so I was getting paid really big bucks, way more than me. I never told anybody what I made, but I was making 33 bucks an hour. And I was at this place where I got paid 24, 6 days a week, 24 hours, because they stuck me out in the middle of the desert, no motel, no nothing, out there on the job site. And so I got paid because the guy who got me the job, he was getting his, 17% of that. But for that, I got a class 9 license that made me able to fly a 747, and I got a master's license. So in 2 years, I could go start my own big business, and compete with Dick, whatever his name was. Um, I could do a lot. Could have been a big break in my life, and it could have been. But I walked away from it because it was like just too much, right? And I stuck around there because when I was out there in Grant, and I was at the Mount Taylor project, which was the deepest uranium mine in the world, right, built on the Hopi's most sacred mountain. They called it Snake Goddess. It said, you mess with this thing, it's going to eat you alive. And what he got mineral oil, but drill right into it. Mount Taylor, named after the guy who started the Indian Wars, right, to genocide the Indians, that Taylor. Anyway, that's why I learned about all the history of what we did, right. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't know it, right. So one night I couldn't take, because we slept in this gigantic big building, concrete floor, no walls. They had slit trenches that everyone shit and pissed in right over there in the concrete, and they'd hose it down. And everyone had like a little bunky kind of bed out in the middle, and they guys would be jacking off, shooting up heroin, screaming and punching each other all night long. Right. And only because I knew martial arts. I remember this. So I wasn't the biggest, strongest, burliest guy there, but this one guy wanted to, because I had this, I was part of the engineering crew and not a worker. And but they did, I didn't get my own little trailer. So because I'm sure the guy who was taking my 17% was getting whatever 3% would have gone towards get me a trailer he was taking. Anyway, as in that year and a half that I worked for that guy, I kind of, but I was still taking home like ridiculous amount of money a week, like 2,200, because I was there all the fucking time. My paycheck was like almost 3 grand in 1971, too, right? Three. It's like wow. So you know, and I wasn't always there. I was only there the first 4 months, right? So one time when I got my first check and we went into Grants, and Grants was like a nothing little town. There was only one real building that was this general store, restaurant, disco, barbershop, um, you know, brothel, clothes store, and gas station. And Cross was the bank, which was a trailer. I mean, if you wanted to rob the bank, all you had to do is, hook it up to your Ford F-250 and drive away with it. And on payday, there's probably 3 or 4 million bucks in that trailer. So anyway, on payday, I had my little check. I came in. I said, "Hey, I want to start a account with you guys." And he said, "Fine, fine, fine, fine." And I gave her the check, and she goes, "Oh, I'm very nice." And she goes, "Well, do you want to, put it in savings and checking?" I said, "Savings, come on, give me a break." She goes, Do you want to put all of this in the bank at this time?" I said, "Yeah, except for maybe 300 bucks." She goes, "Fine. Um, how would you like to have a CD?" And I said, "CD, certificate of deposit." I said, "Sure. What's the interest?" She goes, 42%. I said, "What?" She goes, "If you keep this in here a year, if you keep putting um, at least 1,800 bucks every payday into this account, you will in a year take away $40,000." I said, "Sign me up." So I did. you know. And then I said, "So, don't you guys have some kind of thing with United Nuclear and Kern McGee?" She goes, "Oh yeah, we can have a direct deposit." I said, "Sign me up." She goes, "We had this other thing called a debit card. It's just like a credit card, but it's not." And they had debit cards way before people knew they had debit cards. And she goes, and with that, you can take it out of your CD and you'll get interest for the money you spend." I said, "Sign me up." That was my first day. I said, "Boy, this is good." So I go out of there, and it was like getting to be February, and the desert is the coldest place you could ever freaking imagine. One time, and once the sun came up, it's still cold out there, but the sun's hitting you, it's warm. And we were working on setting rebar to hold Kindorf to make racks to put 6-inch galvanized pipe, right? To carry high voltage from the county line coming in, which was a big high voltage line, the transformers out to also back up, gas turbine backup generators. And also they had a gigantic flywheel in the main building, right? So they could get people in and out if there was any if we lost, county power, if we lost backup power, we could still make power to bring people up and down and still have ventilation. And no one would die but man, 10 to 20 people died on that site every week because everybody was stoned and drunk. And the incompetence was unbelievable, but no one cared. Those people were expendable. One time I was driving, being an engineer guy, I had this little teeny pickup truck, right? Think of the smallest Chevy pickup truck there is. That was what I had. And it was super, God, like bright yellow. So you couldn't miss this thing, right? And so I drive around on the site, and it was gigantic trucks the size of buildings, moving dirt and stone here and there. And they had their roads to go on, and we had our little roads to go on. They had little flags saying, this guy shouldn't come over there. And wherever the barns were, those were the places where you got materials. There was the engineering barn where all the engineer guys were and had their offices and had the blueprints. And we talked about, well, they ain't working. What are we supposed to do? Because all this shit was designed, God knows where, but they never showed up to the site to see what it was. So it was always, well, this don't quite work. So and that's why I got hired. I could do that pretty well. So, and not just Transformers. I was everything that Dick Powell Electric. I wonder if you Google that, if it's still around. Anyway, so my dad had a buddy. His name was Dick Powell. He was a vaudeville and movie star. So he used to come to dinner. But anyway, so I was Dick Powell's guy. He would send all over the place. But for the first 4 months, I was there. So that first paycheck I put in the bank, and we had these gigantic lineman coats that were like a whole sheep gutted, turned inside out. So the hard skin of the inside of the animal was on the outside, and that furry stuff was on the inside, and had a hood. That's why I like hoodies. You had a hood. You could be like, right? Had a mask. So you were in that thing. You were warm, even if it was like gazillion degrees and blowing. You had your big gloves on, and you had your mask. You had this gigantic coat, which went down to your knees. You were pretty much warm. But it was like you couldn't really move in this thing. So anyway, this guy is going to Grants. I said, "Can I have a ride?" He goes, "You fill my tank up, sure." So I do. And there was 4 of his other tweaker drunks in there, and they're zipping off to there. And so they pull in front of this place, which is the gas station, brothel, restaurant, disco, cowboy outfitting, place, general store. I go across to the trailer, open up that account, come out, got my big coat. It's like, and I'm going to buy some. I'm tired of these nasty clothes I'm wearing. I'm going to get something a little more comfortable and capable than this stupid engineering clothes that I'm wearing. And so I, leave my wallet and my big coat. I take out 2 Benjamins, put them in my pocket, and stroll in there and go into the thing. So they have Tony Lama boots, and Tony Lamas are like the Rolls Royce of cowboy boots because they make them for your feet, and they make you pay them up front. Not everyone comes and gets their Tony Lamas. About 20% people just don't pick them up. So there are stores that buy them and then sell them. So instead of getting a $300 pair of boots, you can buy it at $25, right? And they still fit better than any other shoe you're ever going to have. So I get some nice pants. I buy these pants that are well cut to my body. I'm only 22 years old. I'm a good looking youngster, and I've been working out my whole life, so I'm not flabby like these 30-year-old guys are. And so I get these pants that are like kind of like North Face, really nice pants made out of really interesting material that have kind of a liner. It's not big and bulky, but wicks the moisture away from your body, and that's what gets you cold. Anyway, so I got a pair of those. I got a nice cowboy shirt, a real, with a little, pearl buttons and the snaps and the whole thing. And I got a nice jacket, kind of made from kind of like this, but a little, more, nicer. And I got a cowboy hat and these Tony Lama boots and a bunch of socks and this nice thermal underwear that are comfy. And then I go and into the barber shop and get totally trimmed out. And then I get, a nice bath, done by the girls, and then I come out sparkling clean and go and get myself a nice, steak and potatoes. And you got any vegetables? What are those? Whatever you got. So I'm having a nice dinner, and these girls come down and say, can you buy us a drink? Sure, sure. So we're talking and they're giggling, and the girls keep saying, you want to go have a good time? I said, well, I'm having a pretty good time right here, right now. And I don't realize these are prostitutes who want me to go, pay money to have sex. And the girl goes, listen, we're prostitutes. You want a blowjob? You want to fuck? It's, 15 bucks for a blowjob, 25 for fuck. Anything strange or different, it was extra charge. I said, no, girls, I'm fine. Anyway, I'm finishing up my little meal, kind of like thinking about first. I thought these girls just thought I was cute. Then I realized that this is what women do here in this neck of the woods. And then this guy comes over and he's laughing, and I go, what's up, buddy? He goes, can I sit down? I said, sure. He goes, you come with those morons who just came into that van from the mine? I said, yeah. Because when I watched you, you went over the bank, then you went in here, you bought some new clothes, you got this and that, and then you came and had dinner, and the girls propositioned you, and then here I am. He goes, so what are you, gay? And he starts laughing hysterically. He goes, no, 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 no. I live in town. I work in a mine too. But those clowns that you came with left without you. They got so drunk, they weren't thinking about you. They left. I said, this motherfucker, my coat's in there, right? How am I going to freeze it at trying to get back? I said, oh, don't worry about that. But you can stay at my place. I'll give you a coat. And, there's a school bus that goes and drops everyone off at the, where you're working at Taylor, right? So it'll drop you right up there. You'll be right on time. So I said, okay. So we have a few cocktails. We tell a few stories. We go back to his place. We smoke a few, and we go to sleep. I sleep on his couch. He wakes me up. He gives me a pair of overalls. I put all my nice clothes into a sack he's got for me. And he's got not the super duper lineman coat, but a nice enough coat to keep me somewhat warm until I can get my coat out of that van, along with my wallet. Anyway, so I kind of go, I get there on time, and we had this place that's very militarized. So, at early in the morning, around 6:30. You'd be there, and they had a big line for breakfast, and then you would go to whatever section you were working, and your supervisor would give you what you're doing today, right? And so I get my breakfast, and people are like looking at me, and then like more than they normally do, because I basically kind of stuck out. And so they let's see how much time we got left. Oh, we're getting down there. I'll finish this up. From a Hollywood movie. Yep, that's been my life. Mr. Blue Bunny, exactly. That's where I got the job from, Mr. Blue Bunny. So anyway, I get back, I go to my little group, and the morons I came with weren't there, right? That's like my working group, and none of them are there. And this black guy who was our supervisor had a clipboard, and he's reading the clipboard, and he's kind of flipping through it. And there's a state trooper there, right? And the the guy looks. I say, "Hey, Larry, what's up?" And he looks up at me, and he looks at me. He literally turns white and faints. And the state trooper, luckily, was right there and kind of catches him. I'm right there. I'm kind of right, and we put him down on the ground and kind of, and the first aid guy that's where he hangs out, comes and has that little ammonia stuff that you put under your nose to wake you up, wakes him up. And by that time, the state trooper said to me, "Is your name Al Bob?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You're supposed to be dead." I said, "What?" "Yeah, those morons that you came with, they were in the truck. They were totally drunk. They were doing about 110 down 42, and they dead-ended right in the back of one of those gigantic trucks the size of a building that moves. This thing's got the parking brakes on, right? And he said, they were virtually out of gas, meaning I wasn't there to fill up the tank. Boom. So it just crumpled, right? And those guys were just guava jelly. And the only way they could tell who was alive, who was dead, or who was dead, was the coats. And because they didn't really get destroyed. And my wallet and coat was in that truck. And so they put me on the list as dead. So for the next 4 months, people called me the dead guy. They were constantly, I was in I never wanted to go down that mine. And my boss said, you got to go down. There's a transformer pod you have to tune. And we've got nobody else to do it. I said, I'm not doing it. Fuck you. Those guys are morons. They'll die. They'll kill me. And he goes, listen, it's only going to take you 2 hours. I'll give you $4,000 cash. I said, so today is Friday, tomorrow Saturday, Sunday. I'll do that. I'm going to go right there and do it now. I'll do it in 2 hours. I'll be back in town. I'll see you this afternoon. I want that money. And he goes, otherwise, it'll get even more. You need me more than I need you. And Mr. Bunny will send me someplace else because I'm his boy, not yours. You're just renting me. And I kept telling Dick that, and he hated that when I'd say, I don't need you. Because see, in New Mexico, every employee treated the jobs I had before I met Mr. Bunny. First job, I was the guy out in front of Jack in the Box who was dressed in a clown outfit and would dance and had this little arrow come and get your cheeseburger. And that place made us buy our own cheeseburgers, right? And I did it for a week. And, I had just come from Juilliard and learning how to dance and do ballet with Carl Orff. So I was doing pirouettes and all kinds of crazy dancing. And, I wasn't your average tweaker out there with the clown suit being embarrassed saying, go get your cheeseburger, go get, So I got fired and I went home. I always wore that week I was there. I never took that clown outfit off. I slept in it. And I was living the part, right? And so, when I left the job and it was totally soiled and had pizza stuck on it, and the guy said, so where's my paycheck? He said, you destroyed the uniform, clown outfit, just leave. So I did, And my next terrible job was installing car stereos, right? And I worked. The guy didn't pay us till my first 2 weeks. He didn't pay me a dime, so I had to walk to work. Couldn't even, take a bus. They hardly had, unless you had a car, you weren't going nowhere in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was just the rich people and everybody else who was poor. And so I would walk the 8 miles. I'd have to get up 3 in the morning to get there at 8. And I had no real food. And so I was in the trunk of this lady's Cadillac putting these speakers. And she had just gone to the grocery store. And, basically I got back there and put the speakers in and then noticed that she had all. So I just started. And I kind of pulled the trunk down. And the Cadillacs have this thing where you don't have to slam it. You pull it down and it kind of grabs and locks itself. So I just ate all the food that was in all her grocery bags. And then when I went to get out, the thing was locked. And then I was about to make some noise. And all of a sudden the car went back and I whacked myself and kind of went into dreamy land. And then kind of when I was coming to, I was back there. And she gets to her house and opens up the trunk, and there I am, and the bags are all ripped up, and the food containers, I got chips all over me, and and she screams and slams the door on my head, and again I go back into dreamy land, and I'll wake up, and there's these cops there, and I told them the story, and they kind of giggling, and they say okay, and so they take me back to my boss and says, so was this guy putting um, stereo in the back of that lady's car? Yeah. Why? And she says, they tell the story that, I ate all the food, and then she slammed the door on my head and I was knocked out. And then, you know, so, and he goes, so what's it cost? Lady said, I mean, the police officer gave my boss the bill, which was about $32 worth of groceries, right? So he goes, I'll pay this. And so the cops leave. And he goes, you're fired. I said, good. How about he said, well, for all this, you don't get paid. So that was my second terrible job. Third terrible job was I worked for a company. So they built these houses out in the desert in New Mexico. Albuquerque was just going out into the desert, and they just plopped down a concrete pad and built a house on it. Well, it's just on sand. So if there was any kind of voids, the house would start to tip. So our company would jackhammer pipes underneath the house and pump, gunite concrete under pressure under the house and level up the house, right? Usually it took about one cement mixer to level off a house. We'd set up all these lines and use a transom to, see and make lines where the house was going to be level. And then we'd set up the pipes, we'd jackhammer them under the thing, and then we would pump concrete into them, right? And we'd level up the house. And again, all these guys were heroin addicts and drunks, and I was the only, they're all in their 30s and 40s, and chain smoking cigarettes, waiting till they can, they'd be drinking on the job, but they couldn't be shooting on the job. So anyway, so we're getting all ready. About 1 o'clock, the first cement mixer shows up, and we pump that, nothing happened. Second, right, third, fourth, fifth. By the fifth, I said to the supervisor, don't you think we should maybe, normally this doesn't take more than one truck. We're on our fifth. So we'll just keep getting more concrete to level off. And it wasn't budging. What we had done was we had gone with the pipe into a culvert, a drainage culvert, and we're on top of the hill, a drainage culvert all the way down to this cul-de-sac that went down into this part of Albuquerque where they had a mall, and the culvert went through the mall, and whatever drainage inside the mall on the things were going into that thing, right? And then on the other side there was this kind of catchment, right? So somehow the catchment got blocked, and so because our pipe was there, we were pumping, each one of those cement mixers was 5 yards of concrete, quick setting concrete. And we had them lined up. And so before we knew it, we had pumped, and within an hour and a half, we had pumped 15 cement mixers. So that's 5 times 15 yards of concrete into the mall. So it came up onto the floor of the mall where the people buying stuff were walking through the concrete, this quick setting. So, my feet are starting to be set in concrete. And so some smart fireman said, so who's buying all this concrete? There's only 2 concrete companies at that time in Albuquerque. And so, he said, well, these guys are just, in the last 2 hours, used 15 yards of, 15 times 5. So that's 50 plus half of that is, almost 100 yards of concrete we pumped in 2.5 hours. So anyway, our fire guys came up and they stopped us from doing it, and called up our boss, and I was the only guy who got fired. I was first, last hired. They were all tweakers and drunks, and me, I was a pretty responsible 21-year-old. Anyway, so that was that job, and then I sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, and that was. So that whole line, someone asked me that, are you ever depressed? Did you ever get depressed? And really, the only time I ever got depressed is when I was, 17, and I was walking my dog in Central Park, and this guy was really pissed off, really losing his mind, and he was about to attack someone who really, this guy was going to kill that person, and I stepped in the way, right? And the guy whacked me instead of that guy, but I kind of got out of the way enough, but it broke my shoulder, right? And my shoulder's like hanging down near my kneecap. And my dog was about to take this guy apart. So he had him up against a tree. And when my dog barked, it was like he was a lion. And the cop came up and basically the guy who was about to get beat up that I interacted with said he saved my life, blah blah blah, down blah blah blah. And before the cop showed up, my dog had this guy pinned, and by that that kind of mellowed him out, and he told me the story that he thought this guy had done him wrong, and he was somewhat you know affected by whatever he was taking, and so he missed he didn't, that wasn't the guy, right? And so this was a bad mistake of this guy. And he kept saying, "Don't call the cops. Don't call. I've got kids and I'm going to be in jail." And and I was a youngster who was, empathetic, right? Not sympathetic, empathetic. So I said, "Okay, okay, Danny, down." And so all I had to do was say, "Down," and Danny would like be right there, but he'd be looking at him like, "Move, buddy, you're dead." And so the cop showed up, and so he goes, "So you're going to press charges?" And I said, "So." I said, "I don't think so." He goes, "Wait a minute, you don't think he broke your, you're mortally wounded. We're going to send you to the hospital." And so I said, "Well, let's take me to the hospital." And so they basically said to the other, they took the other guy's statement, but the other guy was just threatened, not physically. So that's a lower case scenario rather. So, but that other guy, he got taken away, the guy who broke my shoulder. And I got taken to the hospital. They called my parents. My parents showed up. And my mother, who ran hospitals, comes in before these morons do anything. "Let me see the x ray." "What are you going to do?" "No, I'm taking you to my doctor." And they would say, "Fine, good." And then the policeman said, "Your son won't press charges on this guy," right? And so my father said, "Oh, sure, he's going to press charges." I said, "No, I'm not." And I was just old enough to where I could make up my own mind. And my mother said, "So what's the story?" And I told her the story. And she had her own sense of justice. And my empathy comes a lot. She had a hard life and she made the most amazingness of it, right? So and I said, "Listen, Mom, this guy could have something going in his life if he gets through this." So she says, "Policeman, no, my son's not going to press charges. And I'm going to get involved with people I know, and this guy will be um, given punishment, but not in a way that is going to ruin his life." And the cop was like really annoyed. "Hey, you're the white, you're the liberals," and my father's not a liberal. My mom wasn't even a liberal, because my mom would say liberals are people who feel guilty about being racist. So, and my dad, he didn't have, because he was Italian. As a young person, he understood what that kind of prejudice was about. Back when he was a kid, being Italian was worse than being black. And my mom was older than his, so she was Irish and German, and being those two things was worse than being black. So my parents weren't per se the kind of stupid racist people that most Americans are, most white Americans are. So anyway, um, I had to, my mom took me to this specialist, and he took care of me, and that's why. I mean, it's still kind of creaky, but it sure works a lot better than what those morons probably would have left me with. So for those 2 weeks, I couldn't do anything, couldn't work, couldn't be active, couldn't. So I was at my parents' like super duper rich place, and I was just hanging out, and that's when I really got involved with the girls across the street at Hunter College. And so I wasn't really depressed, but it gave me kind of moment of self-reflection that I hadn't had. And people don't, people need self-reflection. I'm going to leave off on this. Most people have no self-reflection. Like, all the cockroaches, there isn't a single self-reflection bone in these folks' body. There's plenty of guilt, uh, plenty of self-loathing, but no self-reflection. Like, maybe I'm doing something wrong, and maybe if I do something better, it'll work out better for me. And that's kind of what I do almost momentum, conscious intent I am. That's what I do all the freaking time. Conscious aware I am. That's what I do all the time. And that's what this show is about. Are you conscious aware? Are you conscious intent? Where are you at this time? So I wasn't able to use any of my other auspices to add to the show. This was more or less, and I put you into a shamanic state when earlier, about an hour and a half ago, I was going into a guided meditation. That's what this whole thing has been. So all of you who are watching it, on the rerun, be aware of that. Like something from a Hollywood movie. Blue Bunny. Yep. So thanks, Jamie, for coming along and giving us. Too bad I didn't have my reading glasses. I could read this better than I can right now. Super beautiful. Irish stock. Yeah. See you in Mexico. Better Brazil. Well, like I said, I was in Mexico City when they had the earthquake, and the Mexican people are the most amazing people I've ever met. So when I worked for Dick Powell Electric, after the terrible accident of the mine thing that I almost died in, and that would take way more time than I have battery left. He brought these guys in who were real electrical engineers, real professional linemen, not these tweaker drunk meth head heroin addicts. So and they understood English, and I could kind of speak English, and I understood Spanish and could kind of speak Spanish. So we got along great. And we did a whole new line for, something of the defense nature. We were setting up a power grid for something. And we didn't need to know what that something was. We just needed to. And all the line work was kind of done. And all the home runs were in. We just needed to terminate. And that's what, we set the transformers, set the switch gear, set everything, the distribution, which, takes some thought and experience. And so we did that. And we had a great time doing it. And I got to know these guys. And so the earthquake, I think, was in '84. I probably left New Mexico in '73. So like 10 years later, give or take, I got this call and there was a couple of those guys I kind of stayed in touch with. And two of them got to be higher up in the utility scene for Mexico City when I had that big thing. He said, how would you like to come and help us put this back together? This is like right up your alley. And I said, sounds good to me. So airplane ticket, waiting for me at the airport. They put some money in my bank account so I could have a little cash. And I went down there, and they met me not in Mexico City, but at another place where an international airport was. And we basically, I think it was, one of those places where the tourists go along the ocean. And, we were there, and we spent a nice 3 or 4 days where we had a nice kind of suite. We had a nice kind of, they had all the data, everything, what we were going to do. And they said, there's no sense being there because it's like a hellhole. And it's really, it's still digging people out. It's still, not rebuilding, right? We will go in when it's, and all of the heavy stuff needs to be brought there. And that's not, so there's no sense for us to actually go there now. We will go there, in a few days when everything's ready for us to start working. I said, sounds great. So we had a nice, it was not quite a week and not, just a couple of days. It was at least 4 or 5 days. And it was a good time had by all. And we reconnected our relationship, and it was nice restaurants, nice bars, nice places to go fool around. The guys who I were married had families and kids. They were there in the hotel too. So I got to meet all these guys' families. I got to become part of the family. I got to be able to sharpen my Spanish up enough to, be there. So, we went and it was amazing. Mexico City, the largest city in the world, flattened. And the only thing that survived were the ancient Indian buildings. They're the only ones that survived. Everything by the Spanish, everything by the Europeans, everything that was modern. And so we pretty much, the bones were still there. Whatever was in the ground was kind of still there and kind of okay. There were places where the earth did this. So yes, pipes and lines that were in there were so, but they were already being excavated and already being put in to that kind of work we weren't doing. We were setting the distribution. We were setting the transformers. We were setting the distribution. We were setting the things going out into the community. And there were other teams doing all that stuff. So there were 4 of these big kind of facilities that had already been cleared out. The pads had already been cleaned. The transformers had already been physically put there. The what are known as the guides or the towers that cables are hung from, those were already set, and the lines were already there. They just weren't terminated. So we did all the termination, all the tuning, all the assemblage of the transmission station. That's what we did. So, and that took us a good 4 months. There's 4 of them. We spent about a month on each. The most important one, that took us almost a month. Next ones took us a little less than that. They weren't quite as big and demanding. And so, and we had other crews that worked with us that they were all kind of, experienced, but not in that. And so we were, tweaking them up to be the next generation. So it was very rewarding, and everybody, it was really amazing when we threw the switch and this section of the city would go on. There wasn't a drink, and what was amazing, there were no restaurants, there were no anything, but everyone was selling stuff and food, and everything was on the street. And there was no place we could go that our money was worth. Everyone was people would start playing the national anthem when we would walk down the street. We were like there were 12 of us, so we were like the Magnificent Seven. So that was one of my more rewarding experiences as an electrician. And that's what life's about, I didn't even think twice when that guy got a hold of me that I kept sending Christmas cards and he kept sending me pictures of his kids. When he said, "Can you come down?" I said, "Yeah, I'm not doing nothing. We got nothing. I'll be right there." I said, "We got to we'll get your ticket. We will get you a visa. We'll get you, you will go to the Mexican place in the UN. They'll have everything for you. They'll have some cash for you. We'll put some money in your bank account." Because, Mexico had money. This was just a terrible catastrophe that happened. So it's raining. Can you hear the rain? So, let's see. So that was a good little visualization. Did you guys experience it in a shamanic way or just a YouTube kind of way? I'd love to get some feedback. Thanks, Jamie, for being here with us. I wish there were more people like James here. There's 100 people that are part of the cadre, and there's another 100 that are part of my people who needed something from me and got a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Right? And I still think my YouTube, my PayPal still works, but no one has dropped anything into it, um, you know, since 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Right? Not a penny. Not even the usual suspects, right? I don't know what it is. I checked it out as best as I can see. I mean, have somebody out there drop, if you can easily, $10 into my PayPal just to see if it works. Anyway, I think I'm going to go now. It's 2 hours and 18 minutes, and I have I'm down in the red line, so I got to go.